whakarongo mai koe ke te reo irirangi o Aotearoa. This is Checkpoint on RNZ National. I'm Lisa Owen. Haere aki nei, we're in limbo for now. Everybody stays at alert level 4 till midnight Tuesday. After that, most of the country will drop to level 3, but bad news for Auckland and Northland. Those regions will stay in the strictest lockdown, level 4, potentially for another fortnight. A solid decision on that will come Monday. The Delta clusters hit 347, 19 of them are in hospital. Tonight, the COVID-19 Response Minister Chris Hipkins is live. We'll also be live in Northland, Wellington and Christchurch as those regions react to alert level changes. And public health expert Professor Nick WIlson will join us as well. Don't forget, you can watch us live on Facebook.
Ahi Marie, RNZ News at 5, ko Sarah Thompson tōku ingoa. All of New Zealand south of Auckland will move to alert level 3 at midnight on Tuesday. Auckland and Northland will remain at level 4 and Cabinet will decide for how long on Monday. Here's our political editor, Jane Patterson.
Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern says the number of COVID-19 cases in the community may be starting to plateau, but she warns caution is still required. Because of the scale of the outbreak and the high number of daily cases, she says it's likely Auckland will remain at level 4 for a further 2 weeks. Northland's being included for now because of a recent case in Warkworth, who worked at what's described as a relatively large workplace, a rest home, which has a second site further north and staff moving between them. There were 70 new community cases today, all in Auckland, bringing the total community outbreak to 347.
Queenstown Lakes Mayor Jim Bolt has expressed disappointment at the delayed move to level 3. He says he had hoped, as did local businesses, that a move to level 3 would be possible tonight, with a move to level 2 coming sometime next week. Mr Bolt says businesses in the area are suffering and level 3 provides little in the way of increased economic activity. He says the government needs to provide a time frame for the South Island's move to level 2 to provide confidence to businesses. Takeaways will be back on the menu for much of the country from Wednesday as New Zealand south of Auckland moves to alert level 3. Lower Hutt Mayor Campbell Barry says it is good news for food joints which can open for contactless service.
I know previously we did have to have some traffic management in place around the KFC drive-through, so we'll keep an eye on that, but I know a lot of people will be keen to get out there and grab their favourite takeaways.
The Prime Minister says the delay in transferring some COVID-19 positive patients to quarantine is due to the difficulty in transporting them. Health providers have told RNZ some families are struggling isolating at home while they wait for spaces in MIQ and quarantine. Jacinda Ardern says there are 274 designated quarantine rooms and 285 available for close contacts.
The delay is not because of capacity, it's because we use a specialist team who transport, as you can imagine, transporting COVID positive cases needs to be done very carefully.
Jacinda Ardern says more than 200 additional rooms have been made available today. The former Black Cap, Chris Cairns, has been left paralysed after life-saving surgery in Sydney. The 51-year-old spent a week on life support after suffering an aortic dissection, a tear in the body's main artery earlier this month. Sports editor Stephen Hewson reports.
Cairns' lawyer Aaron Lloyd says the former international cricketer suffered a stroke in his spine during emergency heart surgery, which has left him paralysed in his legs. Mr Lloyd says Cairns will now undergo lengthy rehabilitation at a specialist spinal hospital. He says Cairns has returned home to Canberra but remains in a serious condition. Mr Lloyd did not indicate whether the paralysis is expected to be permanent, but says Cairns is focused on making whatever progress is possible.
The Secretary of the Afghan Association says people eligible to come to this country, but who are still held up in Kabul, can now only wait and hope something will be done for them. 3 New Zealand evacuation flights made it out before a bomb blast at the airport this morning, which killed at least 60 people. This meant the end of the country's airlift operation. Khairullah Azizi says he's spoken to 2 men trying to leave who were caught up in the blast. He says they weren't hurt, but were bloodied and have now gone home.
They will just have to sit and wait until we give them an update or someone else gives them an update on what New Zealand and the rest of the forces and allies plan on doing to get other people out.
Khairola Azizi says there are hundreds of people with New Zealand connections waiting to escape. Moving now into sport, the Black Caps coach Gary Stead hopes batsman Finn Allen will be able to play some part in the T20 series against Bangladesh. Allen is isolating in his Dhaka hotel room after testing positive for COVID on his arrival from England. Pace bowler Matt Henry has been called in as a replacement, but Stead feels Allen will be able to play some part in the 5-match series.
That will just depend on, I guess, what state he's in and how badly COVID has taken it out of him as well. So hopefully more towards the back end of the series, he's hopefully in a position that he is available for selection, but we'll have to wait and see.
The Black Caps start their T20 series against Bangladesh on Wednesday. The All Blacks concede they can't afford many injuries on their end-of-year tour of Australia, the United Kingdom and France. The team has MIQ spots booked for November 23rd and will be away for 3 months. With only a limited number of quarantine places, coach Ian Foster says if the injury toll mounts, they could find themselves in a tricky position.
There's not a lot of wriggle room in that. For example, if we end up with 5 or 6 injuries of players who actually couldn't play anymore on the tour, then we're going to get stretched in terms of that number.
Meanwhile, the Crusaders have signed former All Blacks halfback Te Toiroa Tahuriorangi on a 1-year deal. Tahuriorangi made the last of his 3 Test appearances in 2018. He has since struggled for game time at the Chiefs behind All Blacks halfback Brad Weber, who this week re-signed through to the 2023 World Cup. And that's the news.
Tomorrow morning, country music and feminism, not so oxymoronic, says Dr. Jada Watson. The agonising decision about whether to get tested for Huntington's disease. Lillian Hanley's been wrestling with that. Australian actor Brian Brown takes to crime writing. Aussie noir. And cartoonist Toby Morris has a new book, Dad, Man, Walking. Paul Kim Hillaho join me tomorrow morning from 8 on RNZ National.
Te reo irirangi o Aotearoa. Now the short forecast from Met Service to midnight Rahuroi Saturday. For Northland to Waikato, also Coromandel and Bay of Plenty. Rain at times with some heavy falls, mainly about Northland and Eastern Bay of Plenty. For Gisborne, Hawke's Bay and Wairarapa, scattered rain, clearing about Hawke's Bay and Wairarapa for a time tomorrow. Some heavy falls about the Gisborne Ranges. For Waitomo to Wellington, including the Central High Country, periods of rain, heavy about Taranaki, turning to showers tomorrow. For Buller, Nelson and Marlborough, rain with some heavy falls, especially about the ranges, easing to a few showers tomorrow. For Canterbury, Otago and Southland, cloudy with scattered rain or drizzle, mainly about the plains and eastern Otago. For Westland and Fiordland, occasional rain or showers today, partly cloudy tomorrow with a few showers about northern Westland and scattered rain elsewhere in the evening. And for the Chatham Islands, mostly cloudy with rain developing tonight or tomorrow morning. That concludes the short forecast from Met Service to midnight Rahuroi Saturday. The time is now 7 minutes past 5.
Nā mihi Sarah, tēnā koutou katoa no mai haere mai ki Checkpoint I tēnei rā, ko Lisa Owen tēnei. Locked in limbo land for 4 more days, but Auckland, brace. Potentially for another 2 weeks at level 4. For now, Northland's been hitched to the city of Sales. The fate of the 2 regions is to be decided by Cabinet on Monday. But for the rest of the country, from 11:59pm next Tuesday, everywhere south of Auckland gets a little reprieve, moving to level 3. The announcement follows 70 new community COVID cases today, all of them in Tamaki Makaurau. That brings the total Delta cluster to 347, with 19 people in hospital and a rest home now identified as a possible exposure site. Political reporter Annika Smith has the details.
Buckle in, Auckland. The lockdown is likely to last a while longer. Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern is already signalling the scale of the outbreak warrants at least another 2 weeks.
I do want to indicate now that based on the size of the outbreak, which is larger than August last year and potentially closer in scale to our original outbreak at the beginning of 2020, the number of daily cases we are seeing and the need to see a sustained reduction in cases before moving alert levels, it is likely at this stage that Auckland will remain at level 4 for a period of a further 2 weeks.
As for the rest of the country, Ms Ardern says it's still too soon to loosen up restrictions.
Why are we keeping the rest of the country at level 4 for a few extra days, especially the South Island? 3 reasons. The first is that will give us the confidence of an almost full 14-day cycle since our first case was discovered, especially given we had contacts across all parts of the country and over 300 in the South Island.
The announcement means that when New Zealanders wake up on Wednesday morning, the country will be split into 2 different alert levels. Auckland and Northland will be at alert level 4, while the rest of the country will be at alert level 3. There is no interregional travel at either alert level. Essential workers who have to cross boundaries for work must carry paperwork proving their travel is necessary. Jacinda Ardern says anybody's movement is still extremely limited at alert level 3.
Businesses can open as long as they can do so safely and offer services that don't involve close personal contact. So that means retail can operate, but only with click and collect. The same goes for things like takeaways. This can only be accessed via delivery, drive-through or contactless pickup. Alert Level 3 does not permit more social activities, and bars and restaurants stay closed except for click and collect.
Under Alert Level 3, children can only go to school if their parents have to work, with no other caregiver options available. Gatherings are also a no-go, apart from weddings, funeral and tangihanga, which can have up to 10 attendees. Jacinda Ardern says for the most part, Level 3 is a watch and wait phase to ensure health officials catch any unknown cases of COVID-19. Crucially, household bubbles are here to stay for a while yet. Ms Ardern says if people stick to their bubbles, the country will flatten and then squash the curve of COVID-19 cases.
What I would say to Auckland and all of New Zealand, what you are doing is working. It is absolutely working. We are reaching a point where, yes, we expect more cases. Half of what we had yesterday were all in people's households. So it's their family members who, unfortunately, if it gets into your family, it looks like it gets everyone. So we do expect those numbers, will continue to be high. But already we're seeing those signs of what a difference this lockdown is making.
Cabinet will meet on Monday to consider how long Auckland and Northland should remain in Alert Level 4. The rest of the country will move to Alert Level 3 at midnight Tuesday, with a review 1 week later on Monday the 6th of September.
We're not giving up on bringing those who need to come home, home. That promise from the Prime Minister after New Zealand was forced to abandon its mercy mission in Afghanistan. Potentially hundreds of desperate would-be evacuees have been left behind in Kabul after Islamic State suicide bombers attacked the airport, killing at least 60 people. The Defence Force, with the help of allies, have managed to rescue 276 people. Another plane's also carrying an unknown number of people destined for Aotearoa. But 2 other planned evacuation flights have been abandoned because it's too unsafe. Ko taku manuhiri inaenei ko Pene Henare, the Defence Minister. Tēnā koe e te minita.
Tēnā koe, kia ora tātou.
Can you give us an update? How many people exactly have we got out here and who are they?
I can't give you an update on that, sorry. There's that processing work that's still being done. Just to reiterate the point that you made in your opening a statement that we sadly couldn't get everybody. So, like you said, the Prime Minister and we've all committed to seeing how we might be able to continue to work with officials and our partners to see how we can bring those people back.
How many people have you left behind?
That's the same thing around the processing. So once we've been able to process those who have been taken out of Afghanistan over the past 24 hours and then compare those across to the list that we've been compiling over some time since the deployment, then we'll have a better understanding of where things are at and who hasn't been evacuated and who we've been able to get in touch with.
But we're talking hundreds, aren't we, rather than tens that have been left behind?
Correct, we are talking hundreds.
The thing is, I've got a copy of a visa in front of me right here of an Afghan national who was granted a visa and should have been taken out, today, right? So he's stuck there and he thinks you're still coming for him. Are you?
No, we're not. We've made it clear that...
How is he supposed to know that then? Are you contacting these individual people and telling them? Because right now he believes that the New Zealand government is coming.
My understanding is that MFAT have been reaching out to all those people with visas and the people that we've had on the list. But as Defence Minister, I'm saying that our people, the New Zealand Defence Force personnel, are not on the ground. We have taken our people out.
Okay, so the Prime Minister has given an undertaking that you're not going to give up on getting these people back to Aotearoa. So what does that look like then?
She also went on to say that that requires a multinational approach. Our partners are saying the same thing. And of course, Cabinet will have to make a decision sometime soon about what that looks like as well. We also know that we're hearing reports that some of those people who either hold visas or have evacuated Afghanistan and can eligibly come to New Zealand are in refugee camps, which is a whole other process. And we'll have to engage with the UN and, of course, our partners on as well to make sure that we can try and get them to.
So what do you say to this man whose visa I am holding in my hands, who was so hopeful of getting on that plane, who now thinks he is facing a death sentence? What do you say to him?
I say get in touch with the officials from MFAT. They are the people who have been ringing and contacting the people on the ground. Like you and I'm sure others, I've been receiving hundreds of emails from people who are saying they're near the airport or whatever the case might be. We were quite clear through the MFAT officials as well as through the New Zealand Defence officials that over the past 48 hours and possibly even slightly longer, we have been notified about these threats around terrorism and the explosions that we've seen today, which is why the messaging through MFAT to the people they could contact was that being at the airport was not safe. And that is ultimately why we pulled our troops out as well.
So, Minister, for all practical purposes, is this visa that I'm holding now useless for this man?
No, not at all. The Prime Minister said it. We're still committed to those who we were unable to get out.
The Chief of Defence says our Hercules is still in the United Arab Emirates and it will be there for a number of days and that they will assess the situation as time goes on. So is there a possibility we could go back in?
Look, we're just going to have to assess that. The CDF, Chief of Defence Force, and I and the Prime Minister are in regular contact with the intel that we might have. I'm not going to say right now whether or not that's an option in the very near future, but yes, acknowledging our asset is still in the United Arab Emirates, so too are our NZDF personnel.
So what happens there, Minister? Does the Chief of Defence say, OK, there's an opportunity here, should it arise, and does he make that decision, or does it have to go back to you and the Prime Minister and to Cabinet to sign off? Who makes the ultimate call? Because I suppose it's a situation where time is of the essence. So can you explain the process?
So when Cabinet made the decision to make the deployment is valid for a certain period of time. What the CDF is talking about is that the deployment is still currently active. So what that means is while they're in the United Arab Emirates and the intel and the information is coming through the Defence Force system to give us intelligence on the ground and to see whether or not there could be a possible return to
So Defence will make the call then because they're still in that operation period?
No, Defence will come through to myself and the Prime Minister and ministers to act on that matter. The decision-making is reasonably fluid there. We're in regular contact as a network, if you like, or a loop of communication. And it's worked to date, and I suspect that it will continue depending on the advice that CDF gets.
Appreciate your time this evening, Minister. That is the Defence Minister, Pene Henare. It is 18 minutes past 5 and you're with Checkpoint on RNZ National. Kia ora rawatu mo te whakarongo mai. E haere ake nei, reaction from around the motu as lockdown lingers on. While returning to our top story, the country is in limbo for now at level 4 until midnight Tuesday, when everywhere south of Auckland will move to alert level 3. Well, joining me now is the COVID Response Minister, Chris Hipkins. Kia ora, Minister.
Kia ora, Lisa.
So, annexing Northland and Auckland from the rest of the country, last time when we had a border, it was an absolute nightmare. So how is it going to work practically this time?
There's no question. It's challenging because the point of having a border is to restrict movement. And so where you see people getting frustrated is because they're attempting to move. and that's something that obviously where we're imposing COVID-19 restrictions, where we're imposing a land-based border, it's because we want to restrict that movement. And so, any land-based border is going to be challenging. We've done a lot of planning. Every time we've had to impose a land-based border, we've gotten better at it, and we'll have to go. We may have to do that again. Well, we will have to do that again.
Yeah. So essential workers can cross that border, and people with an exemption, right? So can you just be clear with us on this? If you're an essential worker, is a letter from your employer enough, or do you have to go through some kind of formal process with MB to get some other documentation?
That's right. There is a formal process. So the employer also has to be an approved employer. So they need to go through a process with MB. MB will be communicating with businesses about what's expected of them.
Okay, so you've made this announcement late on a Friday afternoon, right? The border basically comes into play at 11:59 on Tuesday. It gives people not much time to get that sorted. So are workers going to be working over the weekend processing those from MB?
Oh, it's a 24/7 operation at the moment. Now, bearing in mind that when we've imposed a land-based border previously, and that was when we put Auckland into alert level 3, they've had even less notice than that. So, this is actually quite a long notice period relative to what they've had previously.
So there is the staff on to deal with what I imagine will be an onslaught of applications.
Absolutely, and like I said, it's not that we haven't dealt with this before. We've dealt with this before when we've had Auckland at alert level 3 and the rest of the country at alert level 2. So there are systems in place, and employers are familiar with those systems because they've had to use them before. Now, the context is a little different in the sense that it's level 4 and level 3 rather than a level 3 and level 2 split, but nonetheless, people will be familiar with that process. What
do you need to see for Northland to be cut free from Auckland?
At the moment, the advice that we've got from those who are doing the case investigations and the contact tracing is that there are still some movement of people there that creates a bit of an elevated risk for Northland, and so it'll depend on how long they can run that to ground and then come back to us and say, look, we think Northland's more in the category of the rest of the country rather than in with Auckland.
The Far North Mayor John Carter wants a secure route past Auckland bypassing Warkworth so that they can basically hook up with the rest of the country. Can you accommodate that?
Look, I can't comment specifically on the issue around Warkworth at the moment, but where we've had an Auckland-based border previously, both north and south of Auckland, we have created a safe passage and ability for people from Northland to transit through the Auckland area without stopping in order to...
So will you look at doing that? Will you look at doing that for them?
Oh, absolutely. That's one of the things that we think about. If you end up with Auckland separating the North Island, so you end up with, up above Auckland and below Auckland being in a different alert level, then we do have an ability to create a travel corridor, but it means people effectively travelling straight through without stopping.
While Auckland is in lockdown and potentially in lockdown for another 2 weeks, do you need to do a mass vaccination for school kids 12 years and up before they go back to the classroom?
No, not at this point. That's not something that's in our planning at this point. We are obviously doing record numbers of vaccines, 90,000
But why not,
today.
Minister? And the reason I ask this question is because looking at the data on the Ministry of Health website, it says 21% of the current COVID cases are in the 10 to 19-year-old age group. So why not get that age group, 12 years and up, vaccinated in a mass event before you send them all back to packed classrooms?
Logistically, that wouldn't be possible to do without cancelling the bookings of all of the people who are already in the queue to get their vaccine.
So we don't have capacity.
It's not so much that we don't have capacity, we wouldn't have the supply necessarily to be able to do that. Now, of course, we're always talking about trying to get more supply. I spoke to Pfizer myself just a couple of days ago. There's a lot of work happening to see if we can get more supply into the country faster, as there has been all the way along.
So, hang on.
We wouldn't have the supply to do that without disrupting the existing vaccine program.
Right. So, to be absolutely clear, we cannot push through that younger age group right now because we simply do not have the number of vaccines. We're short.
That is the big thing that's stopping us scaling up even further with our vaccine delivery.
Did we not anticipate this?
Well, but we've like I said, from the beginning of this year when we made the decision to switch to Pfizer, we knew that we would get about 4 million doses before the 4.5, about 4 million doses before the middle of before the end of this quarter, and about 4 million after in October. and that's effectively what we're working to.
So we have an outbreak, Minister, and I'm really sorry to interrupt, but we are a bit short on time. So we have an outbreak where we have, at least half a dozen schools that are locations of interest with cases where Delta is spreading, and we have given the green light to 12 years and up to get vaccinated, and we simply do not have the means with which to do, what we've said we're going to. We can't vaccinate them, even though these schools are pivotal in this current outbreak.
Well, I mean, let's just fast forward a little bit here. We would not be reopening those schools unless we were, clear that it was safe to do so and that the risk of transmission of the virus within those schools was minimal. And so that's why we step down alert levels. Very little activity happens on a school site at alert level 3 when we get to that point.
Yeah, what's happening with the rest of the country at alert level 3 with schools, Minister?
So at alert level 3, only the children of essential workers can attend school during that time, so kids who have to be there. Our experience from last time, from previous experiences with alert level 3 is that ends up being a very, very small number.
Okay, over the weekend you're going to have a lot of people who are up to day 12, right? And they need to go get a day 12 test. What are you doing to make sure things run smoothly and to avoid, 9-hour waits?
Oh, there's a lot of work that's been going into that, including looking at where subsequent information has revealed that people who were earlier tested may not need to have a test anymore because, the contact tracing and the further case investigation has identified that actually there isn't a risk there. So to make sure we take out of the system people who don't need to get that extra day 12 test. So that work has been happening. And, of course, making sure that we've got our testing capacity ready and operating at maximum to minimise the risk, minimise the queues. But there will still be a delay because we will be, we're expecting another surge over the weekend.
We've got 19 people in hospital at the moment with COVID, all of them in Auckland hospitals. Can you give us an idea of how serious their situations are?
Well, they're obviously serious for them to be in hospital. And so what we are seeing with this particular outbreak with Delta, there's a few characteristics about this one. One is that we are dealing with a typically overall younger cohort. There are many, many more locations of interest and potential contacts per case for this.
What age are the people who are in hospital, Minister?
I don't have that breakdown. They do tend to be older people and they do tend to be getting sicker than they have in previous outbreaks.
Should we be preparing ourselves for deaths in this outbreak?
Whenever you're dealing with COVID-19 and you're dealing with positive COVID-19 cases, regrettably, that is something that we have to be aware could be just around the corner. And that, of course, is one of the reasons why we've been doing this for the last year and a half, to try and avoid that.
Minister, just before you go, obviously with this number of people in hospital, there are different provisions made for COVID patients and the use of negative pressure rooms. Do you have enough of those?
At this point, when the hospitals are not stretched in that regard.
At what point will they be? How many in hospital before you are stretched with COVID?
It would be quite a few more than we're dealing with at the moment, but it's possible if we end up with a very large-scale outbreak that will happen. And so we do everything that we can to try and minimise the risk of that. That's why we're all at level 4, to try and minimise the risk of that happening.
Appreciate your time this evening. Thank you for joining us. That is the COVID Response Minister, Chris Hipkins. It is 27 minutes past 5. Kia mau tonu mai. You're listening to Checkpoint on RNZ National. Now, homai o whakaro, we would love your feedback. Nō reira anei na kaupapa mo te hōtaka nei. Tell us what you think of Auckland and Northland being lumped together at the moment with these lockdowns. Everybody else, south of that Auckland border, will go to level 3 on Tuesday, 11:59pm. What do you think of the split? Are we moving fast enough or too fast? Pātui mai, text me 2101, tweet us at Checkpoint RNZ or email checkpoint@rnz.co.nz. The seaside community of Algiers Bay, north of Auckland, has been rocked by a case of COVID-19, with the local rest home declared an exposure site. A staff member at Amberley Rest Home worked 2 shifts while unknowingly infected. The facility is now in lockdown and locals say their sense of security has vanished. Our reporter Nick Trubridge and cameraman Nick Monroe took a trip north.
I'm standing just outside Amberley Retirement Village near Snells Beach. Now, this is where a staff member has tested positive for COVID-19. As for residents here who have come in close contact with that staff member, well, they are now required to go into self-isolation as a precaution. We've spoken to residents here in Algies Bay and Snells Beach. They say, given the proximity to where they live, the case hits close to home.
Because of where it is as an old people's home, and Algies Bay and that being an old people's village sort of thing, you know, there's a lot of people in there that people here know, so it becomes quite personal.
Amberley Rest Home sits on a slight rise on a hill at the southern end of Algies Bay, overlooking picturesque Kawo Bay. This exposure site is nestled in a quiet community 45 kilometres north of downtown Auckland, and it's that disconnect from Tamaki Makaurau, now with 333 community cases, that's provided a sort of security blanket for locals here, until now.
I think last time, the last lockdown, we were a little bit insulated up here, and you know, we thought it wouldn't happen, but now it's got closer to home. I think there's a sudden rush for everyone to get vaccinated, when before they were thinking, oh, well, you know, it'll pass us.
Having it up here, that separation's gone, and so you do think a bit more about going out and, you know, even coming to the chemist. I thought, I have to come, but I think there's lots of people that'll be taking it a bit more seriously now, for sure.
When the real estate agent first showed us the site where we built our house, I thought, crikey, you know, we're miles away from anywhere.
But now, staff at this idyllic seaside village rest home have swapped uniforms for head-to-toe PPE. They carefully handle medical supplies delivered to Amberley's locked-down entrance. The home's common areas are deserted. Some residents can be seen peering through glass at the outside world. Locals tell Checkpoint news of the case spread like wildfire through the community well before it was publicly revealed.
I think a lot of us sort of heard about it a few hours before, just through local sort of grapevine. Obviously it's concerning being so close now. We've got a young family, so it feels a bit different now that it's up here and not just sort of down away from us.
Health officials say the fully vaccinated staff is believed to have worked 2 shifts in the rest home's dementia unit while unknowingly infectious. In a public statement, CHT Healthcare Chief Executive Carrie-Anne Hall says surveillance testing is now being done for all staff and residents, while staff who worked with the positive case have entered self-isolation. Residents deemed close contacts will do the same. It remains a mystery whether the infected staff member lives in Algies Bay or nearby Snells Beach, but that's little comfort to the people who do.
It's a close community, so I think everyone's quite concerned that it's going to spread now. Yeah, and it's unfortunate that it's at the old folks' home.
It's in our area, so we need to be just a little bit more careful and go by the rules.
Down the road in Warkworth, the streets are just as deserted, bar the usual line for the chemist. This community, a 15-minute drive from the rest home exposure site, has had a few COVID scares of its own, with murky reports of a community case and traces of the virus found in the town's wastewater. But residents here remain philosophical.
What can we do? We're better off than Afghanistan. It's life, it's the way it is. We've just got to accept it and get on with it and not be stupid about it.
Warkworth Butchery's Rob Lees continues to knuckle down, managing to pump out plenty of home delivery orders. He's cheery, but tells Checkpoint the confirmed case just down the road is a bit of a shock.
Normally we like to think we're a little bit self-contained here, but I think, maybe that's gone with that, the complacency and stuff. I think, everyone are doing it well. No one's trying to cut corners. Like, we've been here working, and town's not chocker. People are staying home.
The Ministry of Health is yet to release any places of interest for Warkworth, Snells Beach, Algies Bay or surrounds. One thing's for certain, these communities' sense of security has been dealt a real blow.
Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern says the vaccine uptake among Amberley residents was 73% when the first dose was offered. The Director General of Health, Ashley Bloomfield, says residents' turnover and individuals declining the vaccine may contribute to lower rates. He says health staff visited the rest home on 3 occasions to administer the vaccine. Rest home workers were already working under Alert Level 4, precautions including full use of PPE and when the case was discovered. Kia ora e te iwi e haere aki nei I a checkpoint. Lockdown for longer. Far North Mayor John Carter on being lumped in with Auckland. And COVID-free Christchurch prepares for level 3. But is that as free as they'd like to be? Plus, Health and Social Services raise concerns about the delay in getting infected people into MIQ. Homai o whakaaro, we would love to hear your feedback on anything you've heard on the programme this evening. You can text us on 2101, tweet us at Checkpoint RNZ or email checkpoint@rnz.co.nz. It is time now for the headlines with Sarah.
Kia ora, Lisa. RNZ headlines, ko Sarah Thompson tōku ingoa. All of the country south of Auckland will move to Alert Level 3 at midnight on Tuesday. Cabinet will decide for how long the rest of the country will stay at Level 4 on Monday, with Auckland likely to remain there for a further 2 weeks. The Prime Minister, Jacinda Ardern, says the longer restrictions will be needed in that region to get the Delta variant under control. There are 70 new cases of COVID-19 today, all of them in Auckland, bringing the total in the current COVID-19 outbreak to 347. 19 of those infected are in hospital, 1 is in ICU in a stable condition. A dementia unit at the Amberley Home and Hospital Care Facility near Warkworth is a new exposure site after a worker tested positive for COVID-19. Wellington's Mayor Andy Foster says businesses and the city's council are breathing a sigh of relief at next week's change in alert levels. However, Christchurch Mayor Leanne Dalziel says many had hoped to move to Level 3 sooner. And Business South says businesses need a clear steer on when the South Island may move to Level 2. Takeaways will be back on the menu from Wednesday in the parts of the country at Alert Level 3. Lower Hutt Mayor Campbell Barry says it is good news for fast food joints with contactless service. He does say, though, traffic control might be needed again as people line up at KFC. The Secretary-General of the Afghan Association says people eligible to come here but who are still in Kabul can now only wait and hope something will be done for them. 3 New Zealand evacuation flights made it out before the deadly bomb blast at Kabul airport overnight, meaning the end of this country's airlift operation. Hairula Azizi says hundreds of people with New Zealand connections are still waiting to escape. And finally, the former Black Cap, Chris Hipkins, has been left paralysed after life-saving surgery in Sydney. The 51-year-old spent a week on life support after suffering an aortic dissection, which is a tear in the body's main artery earlier this month. Those are your headlines. Our next news and sport update is at 6.
Kia ora rā e ho no mai hoki mai. If you're just joining us, this is Checkpoint. Ko Lisa Owen tēnei. Ko taku hoa I nai nei ko Nona Peltier for business news. Nona, let's talk about these nearly 40,000 borrowers who used the Harmony online lending platform, and it's over a period of the past 7 years, and they're now, well, they're in for some refunds. What's that all about?
Yeah, so the Commerce Commission took some legal action against Harmony about 5 years ago and claiming that Harmony was charging unreasonable fees. They were establishment fees that range between $500 and $1,500 a pop. So Harmony now has agreed that those fees were unreasonable, and they're going to start refunding borrowers who were charged these fees over the 7 years up until this week. That will cost them about $7 million, and they've agreed that in the future they'll charge no more than $165.
No, this current lockdown, as we would expect, has dented consumer confidence. But what is the latest survey telling us?
Well, some of the survey respondents to the ANZ Roy Morgan survey of consumers, 1 in 7 of them responded after the lockdown started. So it did take on a somewhat negative tone. Headline confidence fell 3 points in August to 110. That's below the long-run average of 120. But what's really important is that the number of people who feel it's a good time to buy a household item, which is a key measure of consumer confidence, it fell 11 points to 13. So that is an indication of what's to come. We'll see, but hopefully confidence doesn't get as dented as it was in the past, given that we do see some end in sight.
And Nona, shall we take a quick trot around the markets?
Why not? Yes, indeed. Our top 50 index was a little changed today. It ended up just 8 points to 13,060. And the New Zealand dollar is also a little changed, currently trading at 69.4 US cents, 95.9 Australian, and 50.7 pence. And that's it.
Thanks, Nona. Nona Peltier with Business News. For now, Northland's been shackled to Auckland when it comes to alert levels. As the Prime Minister revealed the plan for the next few days, mayors, chairs and government officials in Northland and beyond met on Zoom to discuss what their new relationship with Auckland means. Far North Mayor John Carter joins me now. Kia ora, John. Fair to lump you in with Auckland, do you reckon?
Sorry, what was that, Lisa?
Do you think it's fair for Northland to be lumped in with Auckland?
Well, can I just say the first thing is, of course, we are, like everyone else, concerned about the safety of our people. So that's a given, and we want to make sure that we do everything to make sure that no one's here at risk. Having said that, we're sitting here asking the question, how come Wellington can have some cases and yet go to level 3? We don't have any in Northland, and we're still tied in with Auckland. And we're tied in with Auckland because of Warkworth, which is 30k south of our Northland boundary. So we will continue to be asking these questions, Lisa. There's lots of questions to ask, and we seriously need some serious answers.
What does it mean for you in practical and economic terms?
So, quite honestly, in practical terms, it means that from a business perspective, and we're talking tourism, but not just tourism, there's lots of people here who have accommodation and different things as well. But it just means that there are some businesses that are continue to be put at risk. And we want to support our business people. We want to support our communities. We want them to be safe, but at the same time, we want them to be economically viable. And having the ability for a safe route through from the south of Auckland through to the north of Auckland is essential for us.
So you want to be able to bypass the bad bits and let you out of the harshest lockdown and just have a guarantee that you can skirt around Auckland?
Yes, that's right. And we've talked for several months now on that very issue of establishing a safe route through Auckland. We do already have a safe route for transportation of goods and so on. And so we are also saying there is no reason why someone who wants to come north can't travel the same safe route so that there's no risk to our people.
John, how many fugitives from Auckland do you reckon you've got up there at the moment?
I'm sorry, Lisa, I really don't know. There's no question there are some, but I honestly couldn't put a figure on it. I'd be misleading you.
So what do you think about the fact that there are people who fled Auckland during a lockdown then?
Well, quite honestly, from my perspective, it's disappointing that people took that decision. Everybody knew that we all had to play our role. And so for those people, it's disappointing that they took the option to come north and put us at risk. As it turns out, it appears, because we are doing water safe sewage testing of our sewage 16 sites up here in the far north, and we found nothing yet. So it seems that we've escaped. But we just don't need to have that risk put on us.
Really appreciate your time this evening. That is the Far North District Mayor John Carter. No COVID cases have been found in the South Island, but they're staying in level 4 lockdown until Tuesday. But even then, it won't be business as usual. Level 3 means takeaways, coffees and slightly expanded bubbles, but not much more. Leanne Watson's the Chief Executive of the Christchurch Chamber of Commerce and joins me now. Leanne, what do you think of the decision today?
Kia ora. Look, obviously it's not the news that we were hoping to hear today, but what is important is that we have had the signal from the government that on Wednesday we will be in alert level 3, which is really encouraging because we do know that every day under lockdown really hurts businesses. We heard from Treasury the other day that it was 1.45 billion for every week we're in lockdown across New Zealand, so the sooner we can get parts of our economy back up and running, the better.
Given what we know in the public domain about the cases, the locations and the contacts, did your members think you should go to level 3 today?
Oh, look, I think there's a degree of frustration, but there's also a degree of understanding across the business community. We do understand that this is a really challenging situation. We know the Delta variant is a very complex one and that the government are being very cautious about their approach. But it is important that as we move forward, we have more information, that we do what we can to get other parts of our economy back up and running. In Alert Level 3, we do know that more businesses can operate, even though, for some others, like bars and restaurants, it's still extremely difficult. But Alert Level 3 will certainly make a difference.
Leanne, do you know how many more businesses in your region will be able to, do business under Level 3?
I don't know the exact number, but I do know that, for example, the manufacturing sector, and particularly our exporting manufacturers, it's absolutely crucial that we get them back up and running as soon as possible, particularly because the rest of the world is open for business and our exporters are very keen to get their big international shipments, which are worth millions of dollars, out of the country. So it's really important that we get them up and running very soon.
The other issue is vaccination, right? We're constantly being told that that's part of the solution to get as many people vaccinated as possible. Is it moving as quickly as you would like in your region?
Yeah, look, I think we're certainly starting to see that pick up, but we do want to see that continue to be accelerated because, again, the more people that we can get vaccinated, the safer our people will be and the more confidence that we can have across our community. So, the sooner that we can start getting more people vaccinated, we can work with the business community in terms of their role that they can play in terms of getting their staff vaccinated as well, the better.
Level 3 has often been described as level 4 with takeaways, right? So level 2 is the goal for a lot of businesses. How long do you reckon you should have to dwell at level 3 for with the current situation with no cases?
Yeah, look, I think we will certainly be interested to hear what the Prime Minister has to say on Monday with her next announcement. What was good today that we did get the long-term sort of forward planning and the signal from the government as to what's going to happen in the next week. So hopefully on Monday we will hear a little bit more about their plans for how long we are likely to be in level 3 in the South Island and obviously other parts of the North Island before we can start moving back down the alert levels to a level 2.
Good to talk to you. That is Leanne Watson, who's the Chief Executive of the Christchurch Chamber of Commerce. There was no increases in cases in Wellington today, with the total standing at 14, but the city will move to Alert Level 3 on Tuesday night. And our reporter Ben Strang is in Courtenay Place and joins us now. Ben, what's been the reaction to a move to Level 3?
People are pretty optimistic about it, to be honest. The Mayor of Wellington, Andy Foster, said that Wellingtonians are pretty pleased about the move. It's much welcomed by the community here. He said from the council's perspective, it means that a lot of their business can reopen, a lot of their projects, a lot of construction projects can get back underway. For the Wellingtonians, it's a big thing is recycling. That has to pause under level 4 and can restart again. A lot of people request that. So from that perspective, a lot of people are very happy. The Chamber of Commerce head here, Simon Arcus, said businesses are very pleased. He said only about 10% can operate under level 4 conditions, but that rises to about 60% under level 3. So only 40% left unable to operate. Obviously, here in Courtenay Place, a lot of bars and restaurants still won't be able to open, but places like KFC behind me will surely be under a lot of operation when level 3 comes along.
Thanks, Ben. That is Ben Strang joining us from a very empty-looking Courtenay Place. It is 13 minutes to 6. I'm Lisa Owen and you're with Checkpoint on RNZ National. And Muriaki na pita pita kōrero after the news at 6. Otago University epidemiologist on whether keeping lockdown is the right move to crush COVID. Health and Social Services in Auckland say delays in transferring COVID-19 patients into quarantine are putting struggling families into a tight spot. Providers say the delays are partially caused by capacity in the managed isolation and quarantine system. The Prime Minister admits the delays but says capacity isn't the issue. Our reporter Chen Yu has more.
The total number of cases linked to the current community outbreak is 347. The Ministry of Health website says 145 of those are in managed facilities and 63 are at home or self-isolating. The whānau is providing support to households with members self-isolating. Its chief executive, Tevita Funaki, says it's hard for someone to properly isolate when there is a positive case at home.
It's just difficult, especially those that, our families in Pacific are big families, and the challenge of actually getting to isolate. How do you isolate when there's 6 of you or 8 of you in 2-bedroom house?
Tevita Funaki says apart from limited space, the families are also in need of supplies, including hygiene products and food. He says it's a massive challenge.
Even with the food supply stuff that we're trying to supply, to try and tailor to the family and the key essentials. The key essentials are pretty, we know, some of them need medicine, some Panadols and therapies just to ease the symptoms. But we've got major issues around food supplies.
Tevita Funaki says it's especially hard for families split between homes, hospital and quarantine.
The challenge around the literacy, around just the understanding of what isolations mean and how serious this delta is. Because there's a positive case in there, how do they isolate, how do they support that person that is a positive member of the family?
Another social service provider, Pacifica Futures, also says there have been delays. Its chief executive, Debbie Sorensen, says her organisation is supporting families isolating with food packages, bills, children's devices, accommodation and mental health needs.
Certainly the delay makes, a complex situation, and families who are under pressure already feel more pressure. But, it is the nature of the outbreak. The outbreak is a substantially big outbreak.
Debbie Sorensen says government agencies have worked well to meet increasing needs during this Delta outbreak, but things could have been better. She says there had been discussions about surge capacity over the last 12 months.
That capacity wasn't put in place, and so it has meant that there has been, a scramble really in the first couple of days of this outbreak to get everything up to speed.
Joint head of MIQ, Brigadier Rose King, says the team are processing referrals as soon as they receive them. But it's not always possible to transfer people on the same night as a referral is received. Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern says there are 274 quarantine rooms across the country and a further 285 available for close contacts. She says more than 200 additional rooms are being made available today. Ms. Ardern says the delay is not due to capacity and a specialist team is used to carefully transport people.
We have people trained for that. We use them in our existing network for transporting people from a managed isolation facility to the jet park, and we're using that same team. So because we are just getting so many contacts in a new day, sometimes it's taking a bit of time to get everyone into a facility.
The Director General of Health, Dr. Ashley Bloomfield, says there is no further risk to households with a positive case, as they would be isolating separate from their bubble. He says some families would be prioritised.
Sometimes the family group is quite large, and so it's harder to do that. So those are the families that are prioritised for being moved. And also, very early on, the very first discussion is to make sure that any welfare or other needs that they may have are being met.
Dr. Ashley Bloomfield also says people who find it unsafe to isolate at home and feel they might become a case are prioritised for transfer to MIQ.
Australia's Health Minister Greg Hunt has announced a short time ago that all children between the ages of 12 to 15 will be vaccinated by the end of the year. It comes as New South Wales recorded 882 new infections and 2 more deaths today. And a top epidemiologist says the state has been forced to live with the Delta strain of COVID-19. Professor Tony Blakely from the University of Melbourne says there's still time for the state of Victoria and New Zealand to stamp out our outbreaks, but it's too late for New South Wales. World Watch's Paulina Lau reports.
After weeks in lockdown, high COVID case numbers in New South Wales and Victoria aren't budging. It's prompting the question as to whether it's time to accept Delta and learn to live with it. New South Wales is leaning on the vaccine program, granting freedoms for those fully inoculated. State Premier Gladys Berejiklian today announcing a plan for schools.
Face-to-face learning will commence from October the 25th.
It'll be staggered with kindy and year 1 starting, and then progressively other years.
In 2 weeks' time, households with vaccinated adults will be allowed extra recreation time, and those in regional areas can gather in groups of up to 5. Professor Tony Blakely, a leading epidemiologist at the University of Melbourne, says New South Wales has no choice but to live with the virus.
The hand has been forced of New South Wales now. They've had to learn to live with the virus now, earlier than they would have liked, and it may be being forced in Victoria and New Zealand as we speak.
Victoria has been in an even tougher lockdown, including a curfew for Melbourne, which is set to end next week. But the state recorded another 79 cases overnight, bringing the total to 656 active cases. Compliance has been falling away, leading to this blunt message from Premier Daniel Andrews.
One of the rules, one of the really common sense, practical things you can do, if you've got symptoms today, get tested today. Don't, for heaven's sake, as some have, wait 8 days and literally infect everybody you come anywhere near. Please don't be visiting friends. Please don't be visiting family. Because the visitor that no one knows about is the coronavirus. You are taking it with you.
Professor Blakely says Victorians are sick of lockdown and there's fatigue. Come next week, the state will have a decision to make.
I support going just till 2 September with harder measures to see if we can turn it around. But come 2 September, if we're not winning, then we're going to have to rethink about how we do this. Do we start to live with the virus, or do we stay in hard lockdown for another couple of weeks and try and get rid of these cases, even though we haven't succeeded already?
The nature of the Delta variant adding to the challenge.
This virus is so slippery, sometimes you're going to be unlucky, and you only need 10% of your population, including a couple of infected people in them, to be mixing more than what is set out in the stay-at-home orders, and you've got a problem.
Whether it's dance lessons, choir practice or just a general catch-up, everything's on hold in lockdown. So some groups are getting creative on Zoom, not wanting to miss out on doing what they love and still seeing familiar faces, albeit through a screen. Reporter Louise Tanuth hopped online to see for herself.
3, 4, 1. Freedom is coming. Freedom is coming. Freedom is coming. Oh yes, I know.
There's some teething issues for the choir Everybody Sings as they endeavour to continue their weekly practice on Zoom. Paul Robertson is one of the directors. He says it's harder than it looks.
It's actually impossible to sing. We find that people have different lag times on their computer speeds and their internet speeds, and different processing times on their computers, and as a result, it sounds a little bit messy. I don't know if you've ever been on a call with your colleagues and tried to sing happy birthday to someone, multiply that up to 60 or 70 people online at the same time, all trying to sing in unison. It just doesn't quite work.
I won't cry, no I won't, I won't cry, no I won't.
So instead of singing, they're doing catch-ups that involve dressing up, checking in and laughter.
Oh yes, I know.
Part of our Everybody Sings ethos is that we're actually there to build communities amongst people, and there's friendships and relationships that are built up through choirs, so we're really keen just to be able to get people together.
They've been rehearsing for concerts, but until level 2, they're not belting out any tunes, so it'll be this for the foreseeable future.
Just unmute, Ron, so that we can hear you.
There we go.
Good, fantastic. Okay, we've got everybody unmuted. Did you all feel like you were singing? Did it all feel to you like you were singing with me?
Yes.
Performing Arts and Dance Studio Empire have also moved classes online. Studio director Claire Baxter-Cardy explains the vibe has switched to eliminate any lockdown blues.
We know it's pretty hard for kids if they've been online all day, so we've made our classes slightly shorter and we're teaching with much more aerobic energy. And for the adults, we're running open classes next week, Monday to Friday. They're more of a just join in and have some fun at the end of your workday type class. You just learn new choreography every day. You don't have to think about the choreography that you learnt last week. Hopefully make everybody's week a little bit lighter and brighter.
Students range from 2 to 85 years old, and all of them enjoy being able to move together. And all you need is a device.
So we've got people dancing in their garages. I've got someone in their laundry, kitchens and lounges. I think if you've just got a little bit of space, you probably need 2 metres square would be this, people are getting their flatmates to join in, which I think is fantastic and I'm encouraging it. Just make it a social event. I mean, people are having Zoom drinks, but why not have a Zoom dance,
They're also offering classes free to those struggling financially in lockdown. Bubblegum Youth Hub in Otara was dreamt up last lockdown to check in with young people. Their tutoring workshop has gone online, but they're focusing on having weekly Zoom check-ins. It involves icebreakers, games and talanoa discussion after each week's theme. Sonia Masoi is the youth development lead and explains the theme of this week's Zoom.
Is around being proud and being brown. I guess that's just to tackle, the negative attention going towards our Pasifika, especially in South Auckland. And we are aware that a lot of, our young Pasifika are testing positive, with linkages to schools. But, we just want to ensure that it's not about the person, but the virus itself is the problem as well.
They're also making sure people can get online.
Internet is a problem for a lot of our young people, just because we've heard from young people, especially, some of our mentees are saying, well, we've got come from a big family, a lot of us are studying or in high school, and yet we're all trying to share one device. Some of them actually don't even have devices.
They've put in an order for laptops to try and change this and are working on getting data packs to people too. Until alert level 2, for these groups, Zooming is the new way forward.
And if you were listening to Louisa's piece on radio, we'll put it up on our Facebook page so you can check out the video as well. A few of you getting in touch about the lockdown announcements today. So everyone's in 4 until 11:59pm next Tuesday. And then basically Auckland and Northland are being annexed from the rest of the country. This person says, WTF, no cases of COVID in Northland and we're in level 4. Gross unfairness, they say. Barb says, am I the only one who assumed that Northland was staying in alert level 4 because otherwise the naughty Aucklanders will migrate?
Ahi ahi Mārie, RNZ News at 6, ko Sarah Thompson tōku ingoa. The Prime Minister is stressing that the level 4 restrictions are working, but New Zealand needs a few more days with the tight restrictions. All of New Zealand south of Auckland will move to alert level 3 at 11:59pm on Tuesday and will remain there for at least a week. Auckland and Northland, however, will remain at level 4 and Cabinet will consider for how long on Monday. It's likely Auckland will remain at alert level 4 for a further 2 weeks. Jacinda Ardern says the chains of transmission are breaking as the number of exposure events reported each day is shrinking.
We are reaching a point where, yes, we expect more cases, but already we're seeing those signs of what a difference this lockdown is making. Now we just have to carry it through and get us out the other side.
There were 70 community cases of COVID-19 reported today. Far North District Mayor John Carter has told Checkpoint some serious questions need answers regarding the lockdown. Mr Carter asked why Wellington can have some COVID-19 cases and go to level 3, while Northland, without any, is tied in with Auckland. He wants Northland businesses to have a safe route through the city to the rest of the country. The COVID-19 response minister admits having a border south of Auckland will be challenging, but says employers have encountered it before. Chris Hipkins has told Checkpoint employers know how to apply for exemptions when their workers have to cross the border.
We've dealt with this before when we've had Auckland at alert level 3 and the rest of the country at alert level 2. So there are systems in place and employers are familiar with those systems because they've had to use them before.
Chris Hipkins says it could be possible to create a travel corridor for Northland, bypassing Warkworth, where there have been COVID outbreaks. The Christchurch Mayor says the decision to extend level 4 will be disappointing for many in the city. But Leanne Dalziel says the decision is at least a move in the right direction.
A lot of us were a little bit more optimistic that the shift would be quicker. And I think also that it will be disappointing in that regard. There are a lot of people and a lot of businesses who are doing it pretty tough at the moment.
Leanne Dalziel says she is confident people in Christchurch will continue to stick to the lockdown requirements. Health officials say it can be tricky to ensure all rest home residents are vaccinated due to people coming and going. A worker at the Amberley Rest Home in Algies Bay near Warkworth worked 2 shifts while unknowingly infectious with COVID-19. About 73% of residents had had their first dose of the vaccine at the time. The Director General of Health, Ashley Bloomfield, says it can be difficult to ensure all residents are vaccinated at all times.
So even if we vaccinate all the residents at one point in time, others will be being admitted to that facility. In this case, the DHB had a team go in there 3 times to support vaccination of staff and of the residents.
Ashley Bloomfield says the staff are all wearing full personal protective equipment as part of working at Alert Level 4 restrictions. The Federation of Multicultural Councils is urging the government to do all it can to stop a humanitarian disaster happening in Afghanistan. New Zealand's mission to rescue people from the country has been brought to an end following an airport terror attack in Kabul this morning that killed at least 90 people. Federation President Pancha Narayanan says the Afghan community in this country is desperate for news of loved ones unable to get out of Kabul. He says it's essential Western countries continue their efforts to save people who have assisted them from Taliban reprisals. 13 US servicemen have been killed along with dozens of Afghans in the attack by the Islamic State group. In an emotional speech, President Biden, whose son died serving in the military, paid tribute to the Americans who lost their lives.
We have some sense, like many of you do, what the families of these brave heroes are feeling today. You get this feeling like you're being sucked into a black hole in the middle of your chest. There's no way out. But I know this, of the fall on this day, they're part of a great and noble company of American heroes.
Joe Biden also promised that the assailants would be hunted down and made to pay for their actions. Bearded police officers are being taken off the front line during the current lockdown. A police spokesperson says all officers are required to wear an N95 face mask on duty during Alert Level 4. Being clean-shaven ensures the mask is properly sealed around the nose and mouth. Therefore, staff with facial hair are being taken off frontline duties and being deployed elsewhere. Some have already decided to shave their beards off. Moving now into sport, the New Zealand paracyclists Anna Taylor and Nicole Murray are back on the track in the C4 and 5 500-metre time trial at the Tokyo Paralympics. Taylor and Murray have set their times and are waiting for the remainder of the field to ride to finalise the medals. The Auckland swimmer Tupou Naufi is a strong medal hope in the final of the 100 metres backstroke S8 category in Tokyo tonight. With just 7 entries in the event, it's a straight final. Naufi won silver at the Rio Paralympics in 2016 and also silver at the World Champs in London 2 years ago. She has the second fastest time in the field. The final tonight is at 8:20 p.m. The playoffs start early for the Warriors in the National Rugby League. They need to beat the Canberra Raiders in their penultimate round match in Mackay tonight to have any chance of making the top 8. The Raiders are also vying for a place in the finals. Warriors coach Nathan Brown says Canberra have been back to their best in the last 2 months despite back-to-back defeats. The game kicks off tonight at 8 p.m. England are in a commanding position heading into day 3 of the 3rd cricket test against India in Leeds. The home side will resume on 423 for 8, a lead of 345 runs after dismissing the tourists for just 78 on day 1. India have a 1-0 lead in the series. And that's the news.
Tonight on Nights, Flying Nun founder Roger Shepherd selects a mixtape as the record label slips into middle age. Country Life visits a North Otago market gardener who digs healthy soil with a passion, as well as a spade. Anthony Tonic is this week's Friday Night Live act, and whatever the result of today's lockdown announcement, we invite you to keep calm and carry on with a Sonic Tonic dedicated to breathing on Nights with me, Brian Crump, after the news at 7 on RNZ National.
Te reo irirangi o Aotearoa. Now the short forecast from Met Service to midnight Rahoroe Saturday. Northland to Waikato, also Coromandel and Bay of Plenty. Rain at times with some heavy falls, mainly about Northland and Eastern Bay of Plenty. For Gisborne, Hawke's Bay and Wairirapa, scattered rain clearing about Hawke's Bay and Wairirapa for a time tomorrow. Some heavy falls about the Gisborne Ranges. For Waitomo to Wellington, including the Central High Country, periods of rain, heavy about Taranaki, turning to showers tomorrow. For Buller, Nelson and Marlborough, rain with some heavy falls, especially about the ranges, easing to a few showers tomorrow. For Canterbury, Otago and Southland, cloudy with scattered rain or drizzle, mainly about the plains and eastern Otago. For Westland and Fiordland, occasional rain or showers today, partly cloudy tomorrow, with a few showers about northern Westland and scattered rain elsewhere in the evening. And for the Chatham Islands, mostly cloudy, with rain developing tonight or tomorrow morning. That concludes the short forecast from Met Service to midnight Rahoroe Saturday. The time is now 8 minutes past 6.
Nā mihi Sarah, no mai hoki mai. This is Checkpoint, ko Lisa Owen tēnei. Lockdown is making a difference, but we're holding tight for now. The whole country will remain at alert level 4 until 11:59pm on Tuesday, when everywhere south of Auckland will move to alert level 3. Cases continue to be centred in Auckland. All 70 cases detected today are in the city. And Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern's hinted the lockdown there will last a further 2 weeks. Well, joining me now is University of Otago epidemiologist Professor Nick WIlson. Nick, can we start off with annexing Auckland and Northland, potentially having those areas in a longer lockdown and the rest of the country dropping down? Right decision in your view?
Yes, I think the government gave some pretty good reasons. There's some unresolved issues. For example, there's contacts in various places outside Auckland and in Wellington and the South Island and in the Warkworth area. And we've got that MIQ facility in Christchurch, which we really do need to probably confirm that that is the facility that is causing the positive wastewater result. So a few unresolved issues and, but it's a good decision. And I think the regional approach is a good one because it's going to allow other parts of the country to move more rapidly down the alert level system.
Our listeners have been getting in touch, and the one thing they can't reconcile, and maybe you'll be able to explain it for us, is Wellington, under the way it's been laid out, will get to go to level 3 next week, even though it's got 14 cases, whereas Northland is stuck with Auckland at level 4, even though it's got none.
Well, this is really because of the level of uncertainty. We know a lot about those cases in Wellington, from what I can understand, and there's a lot of confidence that they're not going to spread further. I mean, there may be some infection. If they haven't been moved into MIQ, there may be household infection spread, but for the situation in Warkworth, there's still a lot of uncertainty. So we haven't really pinned down all the chains of transmission there. So really, we need to know that. The good thing is that the rest of Northland is showing negative wastewater tests. So it may be that Northland can move more rapidly, sometime next week.
70 new cases today, not hugely more than the day before. So what does that tell us?
Well, I think it's correct that there does seem to be some sign of plateauing, which is good. But more important is that a lot of the new cases are household contacts rather than spread into essential workers or other groups. So it does look reasonably favourable that we're getting on top of things. But as my colleague Michael Baker has pointed out, we would really like to see better descriptions from the Ministry of Health in terms of the new cases, defining them more clearly in terms of where they've been infected and if they're essential workers and so on.
Yeah, well, that leads me to my next question. What other blind spots do you think we have? There's about 30,000 contacts that are identified right now, and according to the Ministry of Health, 76% of them have been tested. Have we still got some blind spots here?
Well, it would have been better to have more of those tested by now, but it is a major logistic effort that's going on, and a lot of great work's been done. But yes, that would have been better to see more of those results in. But because Auckland is under level 4, we can be confident that that is really suppressing further spread, which is good.
You talked about the movement of people who have COVID into quarantine facilities. Just looking again at the Ministry of Health's website, as at 9 o'clock this morning, there were 145 people with COVID that had been moved into quarantine facilities. Yet we have 347 cases, and they've acknowledged there is a delay moving people. Is that acceptable? Are you comfortable with the fact that some people are waiting in their own homes with COVID?
No, this is pretty problematic. There should have been more work on getting these transport systems to allow to move these people into facilities, because some people are having a lot of trouble managing at home if their home is crowded, and the instructions are for people to be in a separate room, and in some houses that's quite difficult. And there's actually quite a lot of limited advice on the ministry's website in terms of improving ventilation in the home, and the website doesn't even tell people to wear a mask. So the home environment with actually infected people is really highly problematic, and the ministry should have improved its advice and worked on getting people transported to facilities much more efficiently.
So we should have had a plan to scale up in terms of moving these people.
Absolutely. We given what we've been seeing in Australia over recent months, all our plans should have been really state of the art because we knew there was a risk of an outbreak happening.
The other issue is there's really high numbers of young people who are infected this time around, right? And including young people under the age of 19, so school kids. Given that we now have approval for the Pfizer vaccination for 12 years and up, and the government's rubber stamped it, and we have got a lot of schools that are sites of infection, should we be doing a push for these younger people during the lockdown when they aren't in classrooms and they aren't moving around?
Well, one option would be that when essential workers go to get vaccinated, they take their children to be vaccinated as well, because they're the children in alert level 3 that is going to go back to school. So that would be a fast-track way of getting them vaccinated. But the other option is that as soon as children return to school, in alert level 2, say, they get vaccinated at school, obviously with their parents' permission, but school is a very efficient place to deliver vaccines, as we found with many other vaccines. So that would be an option there as well.
So would it be preferable to have a high number of these kids vaccinated at the point that they're going back and intend to go back into the classroom?
I would think that's a good decision now that we're seeing how easily it is spreading amongst younger age groups. It would be, good, especially in Auckland, to prioritise. Basically, we've got to prioritise nearly everyone in Auckland, and so possibly vaccine programs in other parts of the country need to be slowed down or even put on hold to really maximise the use of vaccines, and even vaccine teams moving from other parts of New Zealand into Auckland to help out the situation there. And that sort of thing's been happening in New South Wales, actually.
Thank you for your time this evening. That is University of Otago epidemiologist Professor Nick WIlson there. Despite no cases of COVID-19 in the South Island, it will stay in level 4 lockdown until Tuesday. As Rachel Graham reports, many there have their eyes set on when they can move to level 2.
The Prime Minister, Jacinda Ardern, says people may ask why the whole country, especially the South Island, has to stay at level 4 until Wednesday. She says that will provide the country with some reassurance of the full 14-day cycle since the first case, whilst also ensuring time for the test results to come back for contacts of the Wellington cases.
And thirdly, we did see a positive wastewater result in the South Island, namely Christchurch yesterday. As noted by ESR yesterday, it's likely that this is a result of positive cases in a managed isolation facility, but further tests And a few extra days will allow us to better answer that question. And those more refined tests over different catchments are underway as we speak.
In Methven in South Canterbury, Peter Wood, who owns and runs ski time accommodation, was disappointed, saying he can only assume the decision is based on the government knowing something he doesn't.
Well, it doesn't seem very obvious to anybody in the South Island. We kind of think with no cases down here and, with the 14 days almost being up in the self-isolation for the people that were in the North Island. So, we thought level 3 was looking pretty good over the weekend and level 2 mid next week or later next week.
In Christchurch, property developer Richard Peebles, whose sites include Christchurch's busy Riverside Market and Little High, says given that not all close contacts have been tested, he thinks the move is prudent.
Yeah, well, look, level 3 or level 4, I don't think makes a lot of difference, to be honest. So level 2 is where it needs to be. I would have probably favoured just keeping us into level 4 until a bit later and then go to level 2. But we don't have a lot of choice. We have to we have to eliminate this outbreak.
The Christchurch Mayor Leanne Dalzell says the decision is at least a move in the right direction.
A lot of us were a little bit more optimistic that the shift would be quicker, and I think also that it will be disappointing in that regard. There are a lot of people and a lot of businesses who are doing it pretty tough at the moment.
Queenstown Lakes Mayor Jim Bolt is disappointed by the delayed move to level 3 and wants an indication of when the South Island can move to level 2.
I was hoping for more freedom than was announced by the Prime Minister. I guess our hope was that level 3 pretty well straight away with level 2 next week would have been a good thing. I mean, the reality is in our part of the world, very limited activity will be able to take place. So that is going to be really, really tough on local businesses here who are already suffering.
Business South Chief Executive Mike Collins also says all eyes are on a potential date for level 2.
It is still quite disruptive to businesses and they can't fully function for a lot of businesses at level 3. So that'll be the next thing that businesses really want to understand. When are we going to go to level 2?
In Marlborough, Deputy Mayor Nadine Taylor says the region was lucky to have remained COVID-free, and the announcement was a positive one for the country south of Auckland.
We're fairly fortunate. We're strongly primary industry based, and so our viticulture, aquaculture, our fishing and our farming have all been able to operate, and in many cases have had to operate. We're also been fairly fortunate that despite our big storm event, we've actually been able to get an exemption to keep a lot of our roading repair work underway, because that's been critical to some of those isolated sounds communities.
More than 500 people in Afghanistan eligible to come to New Zealand may be left to their own fate as the overnight bombing at Kabul airport puts an end to further Defence Force evacuation flights. ISIS-K, an Islamic State affiliate, has claimed responsibility for the attacks which killed 60 people, including 13 US service members. But as Andrew McRae reports, the government says it's not giving up on helping those stranded in Afghanistan.
Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern has strongly condemned what she says was a despicable attack on many innocent people. She says details on the number of Afghan people wanting to get out and come to New Zealand is still unclear.
Not everyone may have registered on safe travel. Secondly, of those who hold visas that are from Afghanistan, we don't know how many of them were in Afghanistan at the time. And finally, we also don't know how many of those registered we actually did manage to get out. Some consolidation will be required, but I can say we know with absolute certainty we did not get everyone out.
Ms Ardern says the government is not abandoning them.
We will consider what those options are, but we will look into our international partners for those conversations because they will be in the same position as us.
Karula Azizi from the Afghan Association has been able to contact two men trying to get out who were caught up in the bombing.
Luckily, they survived the bomb blast, but, went home bloodied from the blood of others and potentially from, being injured themselves. And so I can't obviously imagine what they went through, but yeah, those are the two people that I know who went through that in terms of people coming to New Zealand.
A former interpreter for the NZDF in Afghanistan, Diamond Kazemi, says the bombings won't discourage people who are desperate to escape.
I've got friends and family that just
wanted to get out, and they tried 3-4 times, and then they were unsuccessful, and then they came back home. Luckily, they were in that explosion. So I don't think it will stop the desperation of people trying to leave.
The president of the Federation of Multicultural Councils, Pancha Narayanan, says it's essential the international community don't give up on Afghanistan. He says New Zealand needs to be proactive in helping those who want to leave get out.
Do we accept that the Taliban are the legitimate government, given that there is no government at the moment, right? So if they are the ones who are controlling the environment, those are the people that we need to be talking to, negotiating to get these people out.
It is 22 minutes past 6 and you're with Checkpoint on RNZ National. Essential workers were finally able to get the COVID-19 jab at a mass vaccination event in New Plymouth today. Our Taranaki Wanganui reporter Robin Martin has more.
Good morning. Do you have an appointment today?
Yes.
What time is your appointment?
Only for 9:30.
Essential workers began pulling up to the TSB stadium well before the clinic was due to open at 9 o'clock. The first of 3 mass vaccination clinics in Taranaki this weekend was fully booked with 2,500 people set to get a Pfizer shot today. Most are happy to get the vaccine.
Yeah, I would think so, yes.
Right.
And I feel very grateful.
It is what it is, like, so they're going to get vaccinated eventually, like, so.
Oh, I don't know. I was just delighted that we got it. It got sped up and this has been put on this weekend.
Great. It's an extra layer of protection.
I think it's really important that everyone gets the opportunity.
No, it hasn't been quick enough for everybody, but it was Jacinta's political thing.
Operational planner for the vaccine program in Taranaki, Rachel Court, says the decision to hold off vaccinating essential workers came from higher up.
Directives from the Ministry of Health were not, because we weren't in level 4, and we were because of the vaccine supply earlier. We had to navigate how much vaccine we used on and where the appropriate use was. So the directive was at that stage not to use essential workers.
She says there's no magic bullet for a perfect vaccination rollout.
I think if I had my way, we'd just be doing everybody as quickly at the same time, but it just doesn't work that way. Yeah, so we do appreciate that there has been a lot of patience required from a lot of people, but we're just really happy to be able to provide this now. Okay, Caleb, a few questions. Is this your first vaccine?
Caleb, who works at the Valley Countdown, being briefed ahead of his shot. He reckons essential workers could have been prioritised earlier.
Well, it would have been nice if it was earlier, but it's good that we've finally got it, and yeah.
17-year-old Zoe Mace is waiting in the observation area. Another countdown worker, she's on the same page.
Well, it was a bit unfortunate that it's only happening now, but I mean, now we've got it, so that's good. And as long as we can keep up with getting those people vaccinated, that's all that really matters.
Peter van der Buken is an oil and gas worker who's put his career on hold because of the pandemic.
I declined a few trips going overseas because I wasn't vaccinated, so I'm not willing to leave the country without having the shots, and I'm working in port, so higher risk. And my wife is a nurse, so I'm in her bubble, so all up. And I'm old enough.
He's happy enough to have waited for the vaccine.
Fair enough. To be honest, you got to start somewhere, so there's always an order of things, so this is the order, and it makes a lot of sense. Fair enough.
You feeling okay?
Colin Webber has come to get vaccinated with his 13-year-old daughter, Imogen. His wife works at Taranaki Base Hospital. He's not happy about the vaccination rollout.
They've known about the Delta virus for quite a while now, so I think they should have really pushed to get people vaccinated, especially the essential workers, frontline staff. I just think the government have dragged their heels a little bit on this, and it's taken this outbreak to really sort of pull their fingers out and get it done.
Imogen, meanwhile, is feeling reassured after having the COVID-19 jab.
Yeah, it's good to get it done. I feel a little bit more protected now against it.
Nationwide, 45% of those aged 12 and over have now received a first jab, but only just over a third of Taranaki residents have received a first dose. It's also the worst performing DHB when it comes to fully vaccinating the population, with only 18% now inoculated. Another mass vaccination clinic will be held for essential workers at the TSB Stadium tomorrow and at the TSB Hub in Hawera on Sunday.
Boaties whose bubbles are roaming the coastline are being told to stay put as the lockdown lingers. The Department of Conservation says people shouldn't be cruising while the rest of the country combats COVID. Nita Blake-Person reports.
Go home and stay home is the level 4 message, but what if your home is a boat? And what if you're parked up near the gorgeous Coromandel Peninsula?
By and large, it is a beautiful place to be out on the water.
That's Nick Kelly from the Department of Conservation. He understands the appeal of Coromandel's coast, but is urging boaties who are in the rohe to avoid the urge to head out.
We're seeing just the coastal cruises and people going out and self-isolating out at the islands, largely off Oahu, Great Mercury Island, a private island there, but also a part of the archipelago with the other islands that are predator-free. And, there's always a temptation there to make landfall on those islands and do a bit of beach combing, which is, under the legislation is actually not allowed. And, these islands, are sanctuary to some of New Zealand's really significant taonga species.
He says the rules around boating in lockdown are very clear and it creates real risks for the local predator-free islands.
Lockdown level 4 guidance is pretty clear on recreational boating, and then obviously the protection of the predator-free islands out there, which is, one of our big concerns as well.
Coromandel isn't the only place affected. Dock staff in the Bay of Islands have received 12 reports of boats cruising around the bay. The message there is the same, just don't. But they do appear to be the exception to the rule. On Aotea Great Barrier, boats which flocked there during last year's lockdowns have been mainly absent. Steve Crawley runs the Marlborough Grove store there and says the message from locals has been pretty clear.
They'd probably get spears thrown at them. If there's anybody tries to come ashore or any boats come in here, the locals jump up and down. They don't like it at all. We don't want people here. We don't want people coming from Auckland. We're a small island. We've got a small medical team. We've only got 4 respirators. 25% of the population's over 65. So, people get pretty upset when people try and land here or come here in their boats to hide away from Auckland.
Coast Guard agrees behaviour on the whole has been pretty good. Head of Operations Rob McCaw says there's plenty of motivation for people to follow the rules.
For boaties, with the big attraction of summer coming up, I think most people are kind of aligned to let's get this thing done and do it right so that we're good to go for summer.
And before we head off some of your feedback here, this person says, I know people from Auckland who are out of town and decided to stay where they were when the national lockdown started on the 18th of August. If Auckland's lockdown continues to mid-September, I don't see why they should be prohibited from returning home, says this person. Another person says, Warkworth is part of Auckland, not Northland. It's easy enough to set up checkpoints just south of the Brinduans to ensure only essential traffic comes north. They've set up checkpoints south of Auckland, so I don't understand why they aren't doing the same in the north. Our late news team will keep you updated through the night, and our news crew will be there all through the weekend. First up, back very first thing Monday morning. Big decision day again. We'll see you then.
Kia ora tātou, RNZ News headlines. Kia ora tātou, RNZ News headlines at 6:30. Ko Sarah Thompson tōku ingoa. All of the country south of Auckland will move to level 3 at midnight on Tuesday. The Prime Minister says the timeline allows for a full 14-day cycle since the first case and time to get test results for contacts ahead of the Wellington cases. Cabinet will decide any changes to alert levels for Auckland and Northland on Monday, with Auckland likely to stay at level 4 for at least 2 more weeks. And finally, the death toll following twin bomb attacks in Kabul has climbed above 90, most of them Afghans hoping to board a plane out of the capital. Our next news and weather will be at 7.
This lockdown, let RNZ podcasts take you places you've never been before. To the other side of the police tape with Crimes New Zealand.
She nearly got away with it, and for a while there she must have thought she had.
Into the shower with an All Black.
It is balanced, like you can't just be like, well, rugby, rugby, rugby.
Or go undercover with Cold War spies in the service.
The day I turned 10, my mother told me she had been a spy.
Escape Lockdown. Follow RNZ's award-winning podcasts on Apple, Spotify or any podcast app.
And I'm Brian Crump, getting ready for another night on RNZ National. Lovely to have your company. Now, after the news at 7, it's Friday, so it's Sonic Tonic Day. And because, there's been a fair amount of stress and angst and anxiety over what lockdown we're in, what level we might be in, whether we're staying at level 4, whether we'll move, how fast we're moving, depending on where we are, we thought we would have a Sonic Tonic which encouraged us all to keep calm and carry on. It's dedicated to breathing. And the 7:07 p.m. question will be, how do you get your breath back when you're a little breathless? You can text me on 2101, email nights@rnz.co.nz. Join the fun after the news at 7. In this half hour, a couple of items that have been getting a lot of hits on the website. By the way, Focus on Politics is not running this week. It's another one of those programs that is taking a break as we work out our logistics during this level 4 nationwide lockdown. So instead, we've got a couple of items in this half hour that have been doing well on the web. First off, this one. Lewis Contini grew up in Liverpool, England. He didn't know his father was. And in a Mamma Mia type of twist, if you know the movie, there were two possible dads. After a DNA test nearly 5 years ago, Lewis learned he was Maori, and his father and whānau lived here in New Zealand. So at 21, Lewis came to visit, and he's never left. He's been telling his story on the social media site TikTok in a series called My Long Lost Maori Dad. Afternoons picked up on this, and he ended up talking to Jesse Mulligan the other day.
Kia ora. How's it going?
Oh, it's going great, thank you. So take us back to this DNA test. How much were you expecting to find out, and what did you find out?
So I didn't actually know anything about it until about 21. I got a Facebook message through off a random family member saying, you're Maori. You got to come over and meet us. So I looked into it, and I found out I've got a nan just down the road in Liverpool. I met her and got a DNA test and found out, yeah, positive.
Surprise Maori.
Yeah. I know. I didn't even know what one was, to be honest.
Yeah. Tell me about the sort of the journey since then, Lewis.
Yeah. So I got the test, and then I came over to New Zealand, and then I just I started working my way up to Northland. My granddad picked me up from the airport, and I found out after a while that he's a bit famous, and it's, yeah.
Your grandfather is famous. Who is or was he?
So before I came here, my nan that I met over in England told me my granddad made a bit of music in the 80s, and I was like, just jamming out with his mates and stuff. And she was like, yeah, something like that. So when I got here, he picked me up from the airport, and he was taking pictures with people. So I was like, who are you to these people? And over time, I worked out that he's the singer of Herbs, Willie Honor.
Willie Honor, yeah, we just heard him there, and that pretty. I presume you hadn't heard that song before.
No, they haven't quite made it over to the UK now.
I know it got as far as Australia. It's a great song, though. I hope you've learned to enjoy it now that you know of your connection to it.
I definitely discovered a taste for reggae that I didn't have before yet.
So what after that? You came to New Zealand to visit, you met some of your whānau, and you've decided to stay, have you?
Yeah, I ended up landing just out of nowhere into a job working in Maori health in Waipareira in West Auckland, Henderson. Yeah. My auntie worked there, and she just said, "Do you need a job?" And I was working at the body health that I'm doing, so, and then I just ended up there for 2.5 years working as a project coordinator, working in communities with health and fitness and well-being for Maori in West Auckland.
And I understand, excuse me, I've just got something went down the wrong way. I understand that you have shared some of this journey.
Yeah, so basically I moved down to Wellington a few months ago to study at drama school, and it didn't really click for me. I wasn't feeling it. So I dropped out about a month ago, and my girlfriend told me that I should start making some social media content, because that's the kind of work I want to get into. I want to do social media marketing. So she was like, "You've got no social media," and it's true. I don't put anything on social media. So she was like, "You should make a TikTok." And I look at TikTok sometimes, but I've never really thought about it as a medium to use. So I just started telling the story. I made a little series called my long-lost Maori dad. And then just over time, I started getting more and more views on it. I was like, that's mad. And people were messaging me saying, you need to keep making these. I was like, oh, God, no, I need to finish it off. So I made about 11 episodes of it, on TikTok.
I think we've got a little clip of that here, actually. Can we play some of Lewis's TikTok?
TikTok kept taking down my video, so I made up this song all by myself.
Some copyright issues with the original, Lewis?
Yeah, it turns out you're not allowed to use that song, so I had to do it myself.
I don't know if you can answer this question or not, but what is it like to find out partway through your life that you're Maori?
What a question, eh? I've always obviously known I'm brown because, colour, you can see it. But I've always had that upbringing where I've known I was a minority of some sort. So I've experienced that in my life in England, but coming over to New Zealand's mad. Like I never had any brown kids around me growing up. I lived in a village, so it was really just like overwhelming to come over here and like meet people like me, my colour, like, and they have a connection to me. Like my family back home is me, my nan and granddad and my auntie. So coming over here, meeting like cousin after cousin and aunties and uncles and everything, it's been a great experience. Yeah.
I understand you've got a bit of a bucket list going on.
Yeah, so I put out a video at the start of the week saying to the people of New Zealand, what did I miss out on between the years of like 1994 and 2010? Because I feel like there's a big gap in my knowledge of New Zealand. I have missed out on a childhood here. I got heaps and heaps of replies, like thousands, just telling me all the things, foods, TV shows, films, places to go, everything. People like just give me so much to do. So now I'm gonna head off and tick them all off. Yeah, I was gonna do it this week. I was supposed to be in Auckland today to do jump jam with Marlborough Davidson, but unfortunately that didn't happen. But we'll have to do it another time.
What else is on your list? Jump jam's a great one, by the way.
Yeah, jump jam. Loads of like Boy. I've never seen Boy. I've never seen like Whale Rider. There's heaps of places like to visit, like Raglan. I've never done a Manu. So this is like everything that people did as a kid. I need to tick them off. About 100.
Would you accept suggestions from our audience?
Of course. Yeah. I need more. It's good content. It gives me something to do.
How long are you going to stay in New Zealand?
I think for the foreseeable future. I've been here for 4.5 years now. Pretty happy here. Yeah, I think I see my future here.
And do you think, no expectation here, but do you think that you will like keep connecting to the Maori side of your family, or to your iwi or your hapu, or or do you sort of feel like you've connected already and it's just time to get on with life?
No, I think there's so much I need to do still. Like my granddad and my dad have never really